Hey, this is Anthony from MakeWeirdMusic.com, and I'm here with Michael Manring
Hi.
in my bedroom studio. So thank you for traveling out here, Michael.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Anthony.
All right. So I wanted to talk about instruments that provide a unique voice for musicians, and you certainly have one of those instruments.
I know something about that.
Yeah. So can you tell us about the bass you have today?
Yeah, this is officially known as the Zon Michael Manring Hyperbass. And it's a bass that Joe Zon and I designed together almost 25 years ago now. And the idea was that there were a lot of different design possibilities that we wanted to try out on an instrument. And we kind of decided, well, let's just put them all on one instrument and see what happens. And we didn't really, we weren't like banking on it being a success. It was going to be kind of it's a prototype is what it is, a kind of experiment to see what would work and what didn't. And we ended up, I was going to say we ended up being lucky, but what happened was Joe Zon is just really good at what he does. And everything works beautifully. Mm-hmm. And so the instrument really kind of works so well as an integrated whole that it's kind of its own beast, and it's just been a joy for me. It's really opened up a whole lot of possibilities that wouldn't be there otherwise. So it's a thrill.
So what makes this instrument different from a regular 4-string fretless bass?
So a couple of things. Probably the most obvious design change in this is that the fingerboard is especially long. A standard bass fingerboard, most of them end about here, and then there's a standard that ends here. And this little bit is actually almost an additional octave because the notes get close together as you go up this way. So extending it this far actually gives you a lot more range. However, the idea behind this wasn't necessarily about having more range as much as it was we couldn't figure out why not to do it. We knew where we wanted the pickup to be, and we couldn't think of why the fingerboard should end at some point before that. And so we said, well, we'll just extend the fingerboard all the way to the pickup and see what happens. And so I don't tend to do a lot of direct playing in this last little area of the fingerboard. Occasionally it's really nice to have. But there's these other things that happen because I have fingerboard there that have ended up being really, really exciting. There's lots of sounds I can make on that part of the fingerboard with my picking hand, with my right hand, that really have become an important part of what I do. So that's been a really nice thing. And as time goes on, I've been kind of working on playing up in the super stratosphere every once in a while, and it's really kind of nice to have. With bass, you're always kind of running out of notes when you go for that extreme moment. That doesn't happen on this instrument. There's always more to play than I can usually manage to get to. So that's the first thing about this. And then Joe decided to do a real deep cutaway, so it's not too hard to get up here. I have to kind of choose whether I'm going to go on top of the cutaway or underneath it in my fingerings that I use. And I'll do either one depending on what kind of passage I'm playing. But it's kind of nice to have that option.
Is it the full width of the body behind the neck, or is there any sort of special shaping for your hand to reach?
Yeah, there's no bevel. It's just a straight cut back. And in instruments that we've been doing since this one, as I said, this one was the first prototype like this. He's been doing some different shaping with that part of the instrument to see what works. And it's a lot of fun. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do it, but it's nice to kind of goof around and see what can be done. So yeah, that's kind of the first thing. Another interesting thing about this instrument that's not immediately visible is the electronics. We wanted to do some different things with electronics on this instrument, and So one of the things that's happening is underneath this pickup cover, there are actually 4 separate pickups, one for each string. There's a humbucking pickup for each string. And so that gives me the ability to plug each string into a different amplifier or a different channel in the mixing board and really deal with each string individually. And this is something I had wanted to do for a long time. And I just find really thrilling because it just opens up a ton of things you can do. I mean, I suppose it's kind of obvious that you can do completely bizarre, crazy things like put a massive amount of fuzz tone on one string and have the others clean. And that's a lot of fun. But often I'll just use it kind of subtly. You know, if I'm recording, I use it mostly when I'm recording solo bass music. And so I can have, for instance, the same reverb sound across all 4 strings, but it can be shorter on the low strings, so I can have a real rich reverb that doesn't cloud up as much. I can have different kinds of compression on each string, different kinds of EQ, and panning. I can do panning differently with the strings. And that's really something that has ended up being really thrilling to me. Just the panning thing alone is kind of, the sound that it makes really is something that really impresses me. If you have just sound kind of moved across a sonic canvas of some kind, it really behaves in a different way than if it's all coming out of one thing. So, so that's the quadrophonic magnetic pickup. In addition to those 4 outputs, Joe built pickups into the body of this instrument, ceramic pickups into the body. There's one up here, there's one here, there's one here, and then there's one up here, the headstock. And then the signal from those goes back here. This is like a little trim pot mixer. These little trim pots you can kind of move with your fingernail. And you can decide how much of each of those you want to have in the mix. So if you want to have just this one as a separate output, you can do that. So you can do different things with that, or you can have them mixed in different ways. And that comes out of 5th output. And all these outputs are work together out of really nice multi-output jack made by a company called Limo jack. It was a very expensive, groovy part of this instrument was using this Limo jack to do the multiple output. But in addition to that, Joe figured out how all of those could be summed together so that I can play this instrument in mono. I was so excited about these possibilities, it never really occurred to me that it's kind of wildly impractical to need 5 inputs anytime you want to play the instrument. And so Joe built a mono system into the instrument as well. And in that case, all these outputs are summed, and you can still control the mix of the transducers, which is nice. And those come out a regular 1/4 inch output, just like any other instrument. And in fact, that's the one I end up using most of the time just because it's logistically so much easier. But I love recording with the multiple output. So that's kind of the electronic aspect of this instrument. And then finally, probably the most bizarre thing about this instrument is that we designed it for dynamic tuning. For many, many years, I've been interested in using different tunings on the bass. The bass is incredibly receptive to altered tunings. And when you change the tuning, these kind of wonderful, magical things happen. And I just got very into this concept and realized that there's so much to do with it and so many different tunings you can do with the bass that I really wanted to keep moving beyond that and to kind of go to the next level with it. And one of the places I wanted to go was into this area of dynamic tuning. So not only is it about using unusual tunings for the bass, altered tunings, non-standard tunings for the bass, but being able to move those, being able to change through those. And I started trying to do that just by turning the tuning keys while I was playing. And that's okay. You can do a little bit with that, but I wanted to really take take it a lot further than that. And that was probably the biggest challenge from a design standpoint. Joe and I talked about this for a long time and talked about various systems we could do, and we designed a few systems that we couldn't afford to build. But we ended up with this system, which is really worked amazingly well. What's happening is that here at the headstock, we're using, I don't know if you can see those are Hipshot Extender keys. And this is actually a relatively standard add-on device for a bass. It's designed to be put just on your low string, typically on a low E string. And the tuning key sits on a kind of a plate. And when I move this lever, the whole tuning key tilts. Just the tension of the string causes the tuning key, pulls the tuning key to tilt. And that you can use that to drop your E string down to a D or a C or a B, really whatever you want. You can set it with this little set screw in the back. And so these are two right-handed hip shots, and these are two left-handed hip shots. And so I have one on each string here. And this allows me to change the tuning of each string individually here at the headstock.
Can you play a few notes and just show us how it works?
Sure. So it's a really nice tool to have. It really, opens up a lot of possibilities. One of the things I discovered is that I really like the sound of the tunings moving. Just, how it sounds when the bass moves, which is not something I expected necessarily. And I often write pieces around that, just the movement of the tunings, because to me it's an appealing sound. So in addition to this system, we did a system here at the bridge as well, which we really wanted to do as much as we could at the time, given the constraints of the technology and the amount of money we had to put into this. So this bridge is one that Zon makes, and it's a little hard to explain. What happens is each string kind of sits on a kind of a tray, and underneath the bridge there are cams. So they're basically flat on one side and rounded on the other. And these levers turn the cams. And the trays, they're little set screws on the bottom of the trays. And when I turn the cams, that causes the trays to move up and down. And you can set, what you want the tunings to be with the set screws in the bridge. The bridge is designed to do 3 different tunings. So you have a high tuning, a medium tuning, and a low tuning. And they can be more or less whatever you want within, some limits. It depends on a lot of things like the gauge of the string and the tension of the string and things like that. And even how you set up the bridge makes a difference. But it does give you some really cool possibilities. As you move through the tunings in the bridge, you don't have to have all the strings change too. I usually set the bridge up, in fact, so that the high position, from the high position to the low position, the two high strings stay the same. And then to the low position, you're dropping down all 4 strings. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's a thing I like to do where it's, moving just 2 strings or all 4, wherever you want to do. And then when that moves, that's like this. Here I'm moving all 4 strings down the whole step. This is B flat F, B flat F. This is A flat, E flat, A flat, A flat. And so I use these 2 systems in combination to, gives me a chance to move through a whole lot of tunings. In one piece. And I think that's pretty much it.
That is pretty incredible.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, let's get some footage of you playing. Let's see if we
Okay.
can get this 5 output thing working.
Okay.
And, see how it goes. Thanks a lot.
You bet.
All right, cool.